hearing began, the atmosphere was tense. It was early morning in room 2141 of the Rayburn House office building, where the lights felt harsh, the coffee was stale, and everyone's suits were a bit too stiff. While the hearing officially focused on judicial overreach, it was clear to everyone present that something more personal was at stake. Representative Jasmine Crockett sat at the table, her hands folded neatly. She reviewed her notes with determination, not nerves. This wasn't her first hearing, nor the first time she had to prove her worth in a room full of skeptics. Across from her, Chief Justice John Roberts sat composed, silver-haired, and impeccably dressed. Yet his eyes darted around the room, calculating the atmosphere. The chairwoman called the hearing to order, and the room shifted as journalists leaned in and aides tapped their tablets. The early questions were predictable, filled with legal jargon, checks and balances, historical precedents, judicial restraint. Roberts answered smoothly, maintaining decorum even as the tone sharpened. When it was Crockett's turn to speak, the tension escalated. She adjusted her mic, cleared her throat, and began with direct, firm questions. She asked Roberts whether the court's lack of a formal code of ethics weakened public trust, referencing recent controversies without wavering. Roberts leaned back slightly, responding with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Congresswoman Crockett, I appreciate your concern, but questions of judicial conduct require a certain depth of understanding in constitutional law. Perhaps a different line of questioning would be more productive. His words were smooth, but the implication was clear. He was dismissing her. Staffers exchanged glances, and even the stenographer hesitated. Crockett, however, remained unfazed. She had something more powerful in mind. Chief Justice Roberts, she said, her voice steady, you may not be familiar with my background, so let me clarify. For 10 years, I worked as a public defender in Dallas County. I've stood beside people who couldn't afford bail for shoplifting a sandwich. I didn't just read about constitutional law. I had to make it work when no one else would. The room fell silent. Crockett continued, leaning slightly toward the mic. When I ask whether the Supreme Court's lack of transparency damages public trust, I'm not speaking from theory. I'm speaking from real people's stories. They rely on public trust to believe the system works. Roberts remained silent, tapping his pen on the table, but the shift in the room was palpable. I appreciate your service, Representative, he finally said, but I'd caution against conflating courtroom experience with judicial oversight. They are distinct disciplines. Crockett smiled calmly. With all due respect, Chief Justice, I'm aware they're distinct, but when institutions claim they're above accountability, it's the public who pays the price. That's the only discipline I care about. A soft gasp echoed from the gallery. Roberts shifted slightly in his chair, revealing a hint of discomfort. Crockett pressed on, stating, I know the robes come with legacy, but legacies don't protect people. Laws do, and laws mean nothing if those writing and enforcing them think they're beyond critique. Before Roberts could respond, the chairwoman intervened, reminding everyone to stay focused on the agenda. But the moment had already resonated, and the exchange quickly spread across social media. After the hearing, chaos erupted in the hallway. Cameras clicked, reporters shouted questions, and aides hurried to shield their representatives. But Jasmine Crockett walked out alone, eyes forward, jaw set, not in anger, but in clarity. A young journalist caught up to her, asking if she was surprised by the Chief Justice's comments. I've been in courtrooms where a judge wouldn't even look at my client because of where they lived or what they wore. Nothing surprises me anymore, she replied, a statement that would be replayed across major networks. Inside her office, she allowed herself to exhale, pulling off her blazer. Her chief of staff, Delaney Ford, entered with a laptop, disbelief and adrenaline on her face. It's everywhere. That moment with Roberts is already in edit reels. Do you want to release a statement before the headlines twist it? Crockett shook her head. Let them twist it. I'm not cleaning up their mess. Delaney warned of backlash, saying some claimed she disrespected the office of the Chief Justice. The office can handle a little truth, Crockett replied, looking out at the Capitol dome. That night she received a FaceTime call from her niece Harper. Auntie Jazz, you made a judge quiet. Jasmine smiled, feeling a warmth she hadn't all day. After hanging up, she opened her old green notebook filled with handwritten notes from her public defender days, reminding her of the people she fought for. The next morning, her old law school professor called, praising her for providing a blueprint for students who didn't come from privilege. "You walked into that room, sat across from the gatekeeper, and made your presence count," she said. Jasmine exhaled, feeling a sense of purpose settle within her. 3 days later, the Judiciary Committee scheduled a follow-up hearing to address transparency reforms in the Supreme Court, with Crockett set to open the discussion. Delaney noted, "They're giving you the mic first." Jasmine blinked, realizing the significance. On the day of the hearing, she wore navy, strong and serious. As she entered, a man thanked her for speaking up, saying his son wanted to clerk for someone like her. Inside, the atmosphere was different. People leaned forward, expecting her to lead. When she began speaking, her voice was low but unmistakable. "We've had a lot of conversation lately about qualifications. Let me be clear. My qualification doesn't come from how many times I've shaken hands with judges. It comes from the thousands of hours I've spent sitting across from people this system failed." Some committee members shifted uncomfortably, but Crockett pressed on. "It's easy to believe in a system when you're always standing on the clean side of it. It's much harder when you've had to defend someone the system already wrote off before they spoke." She looked toward the bench where Roberts listened intently. "That's why we're here today, to ask why the Supreme Court has no formal code of ethics, no accountability when power is misused." She spoke the truth, and this time no one interrupted. After her testimony, the room fell silent, a rare moment of reflection. Later, Roberts would issue a carefully worded statement, acknowledging the need for a broader conversation on judicial standards. Back in her office, Jasmine sat quietly, her phone buzzing with messages and media requests. Delaney entered with 2 coffees, reminding her of the impact she had made. "You shifted the room again. That's 2 times in 1 week," she said. Jasmine took a sip, looking out the window. "Let's see if they shift the system." She knew the hardest work lay ahead, not just in the spotlight, but in the relentless push for change. The clip of her second testimony circulated even faster than the first, not because it was confrontational, but because it was grounded in truth. People saw someone rewriting the rules of authority, not with loudness, but with discipline and humanity. In Washington, a noticeable shift began as representatives circulated a proposal for a Supreme Court code of ethics. It wouldn't pass overnight, but it was moving, and Jasmine didn't take a victory lap. Instead, she returned to work, her voice carrying weight in a different way. One afternoon, she visited a community center in Shreveport, where an older woman gripped her hand tightly, saying, "You reminded us we're not crazy. That's all some of us need." Jasmine nodded, understanding the power of her presence. That night, she wrote in her green notebook, "Power without proximity is performance, but power that listens, that's change." She closed the book, letting the silence settle, a silence that felt like a long day finally saying what needed to be said. The goal was never to go viral. It was to keep showing up and reminding people that authority isn't about titles and credibility isn't about convenience. It's about doing the hard work when nobody's clapping. So if you're watching this and wondering if you're qualified, ask yourself, who told you that you weren't? Subscribe to Congressional Conflicts for more stories that remind us. Truth doesn't need permission. It just needs to be spoken.